the PDF of y1, y2, simply it's equal to the PDF of x1, x2, evaluated at x1, which is equal to 2t inverse, t1 inverse, and x2, which is 2t2 inverse. So now I need to find these two inverse functions, first of all, multiplied by the Jacobian, the determinant of the Jacobian. So again, I need to find this. So what I'm missing here is the determinant is of the vacation of the Jacobian and the T1 inverse and T2 inverse. Once I find them, I will be able to write the PDF of y in terms of the PDF of x. So let's find, first of all, the inverse functions. x1. Now, in order to find x1 as a function of y1 and y2, simply you need to solve these two equations together. So you will get basically x1 equals dy1 minus by2 divided by ad minus bc. You can find it by solving the above two equations for x1. And x2, you can find in similar fashion, equals to this. So now I can write x1 and x2 in terms of the functions, the inverse functions, t1 inverse, t2 inverse, which is equal to the inverse transformation matrix, inverse transformation matrix multiplied by y1, y2. Okay? So if this transformation is, we write it as T like this, then this is T inverse. This is T inverse, the inverse of the transformation matrix. Now, the Jacobian equals the inverse of the transformation matrix. And what I need here is the determinant of the Jacobian. You know the determinant. You multiply this by this minus this by this. And you get basically 1 over AD minus BC. Okay? So now I have the determinant of the Jacobian done. I have T inverse, T1 inverse, which is, we found it already here. T2 inverse, which is this, which already we found it by solving the two equations for x1 and x2. And I write the inverse of the Jacobian, or sorry, the Jacobian, determinant of the Jacobian. That's it. So if I know the PDF of x1 and x2, now I can find the PDF of y1, y2 by simply substituting for x1 as this, substituting for x2 as this, and multiplying by the Jacobian determinant. أي سؤال يا شباب؟ Any question؟
كل شيء واضح حتى الآن.
طيب ممتاز. أي شباب ثانيين؟ Any question؟ Okay. Now let's talk about Gaussian random variables per se. So linear transformation of Gaussian random variable specifically. So here we have y equals t, which is the t transformation matrix. matrix اللي تكلمنا عنها قبل كده. وهذا x. So this is basically the x vector. x1, x2, xn. خلينا ناخذها 2 by 2 mainly يعني. everything is written in terms of n by n. So basically we write it here as. وهذه y is y1, y2. And we have transformation matrix, which is A, B, C, D method. Then X, which is the vector X, can be written as the inverse transformation matrix multiplied by Y. Okay? And we assume always that T is non-singular. إيش يعني non-singular? It can be شباب إيش يعني non-singular? It can be
non-monotonic.
لا. It can be inverted. So I can write x1, x2 in terms of y1, y2. It can be inverted. هذه يعني non-singular. Full rank في الماتريكس theory. نعم, I can invert the matrix such that I can get x1, x2 in terms of y1, y2. Yes. So inverted معناها can get x1, x2 in terms of y1, y2. This is what inverted means. Okay? So basically I have here y1, y2 equals t, which is a matrix 2 by 2, multiplied by x, x1, x1, x2, which means that x, the vector x, is the inverse transformation matrix, T inverse, multiplied by Y. And we assume that T is non-singular. Okay, so now, in this case, the Gaussian or linear transformation of Gaussian random variables result in Gaussian random variables as well. So here, y's, or if x is Gaussian, if the vector x is jointly Gaussian, then the vector y. So if x1, x2 is jointly Gaussian, then y1, y2 is also jointly Gaussian. What does this mean? ايش رايكم؟ ايش يعني؟ What do we need? If I know that y1, y2 is also jointly Gaussian, what do I need to determine the PDF of y1, y2? شباب, if I know that y1, y2 is jointly Gaussian, then what do I need to determine their PDF?
The mean and
Yes, the means, the two means of y1, y2, and يا شباب,
remember the symbols, which is the A and the row, I think. But I forget the name.
we need y1, sorry, شباب, we need y1 mean, y2 mean, we need the variance of y1, we need the variance of y2, and we need the covariance between y1, sorry, and y2. This is what I need. Well, if I know this, خلاص, I know everything. Now, in order to determine this, simply I write yj inverse, yj mean will be equal to the transformation matrix multiplied by the mean x. So basically, the mean y1, y2 will be equal to t, which is the transformation matrix, multiplied by x1 mean, x2 mean. هذه t هي transformation matrix. Okay? So now the two means are known. If I know the means of x1, x2, I know the means of y1, y2. The second thing is the variance and the the variance and the covariance. المينز خلصناها باقي هذول الثلاثة. You know that the variance and the covariance can be written in terms of which is the covariance matrix. لو تتذكروا ايش الcovariance matrix كانت C. If I know CX1 X2 what is sorry the matrix CX was equal to لو تتذكروا كانت الفارينس X1 والvariance X2 and we have here in the cross diagonal the covariance between X1 and X2 والcovariance between X1 and X2. It's a symmetric matrix. Now if I know this, then I can write CY, which is the covariance for Y, for the vector Y, it will be equal to T multiplied by CX. Sorry. And yes, T transpose. هذه كاتبين هنا. Okay, so basically it's the same as the covariance matrix of X multiplied by the transformation matrix before the, so pre-multiplied by transformation matrix and post multiplied by the transpose, هذا transpose of T. تعرف الترانسبوز شباب؟
Yes.
transpose. Okay, basically تخلي الرو column والcolumn row. Okay, again let's have an example. هذا هنا derivation. أنا أعطيتكم الفاينل answer. قلت لكم إنه what is the mean vector for y1 y2, which is the transformation matrix multiplied by the mean vector of x1 x2, and I gave you the covariance matrix of y equals the matrix T multiplied by the covariance matrix of X multiplied by T transpose. However, I did not tell you why. So the derivation is self-study. So I will leave it for you, those interested to understand more. However, let's have an example. Again, 2 by 2 example. So here we have X1 and X2 are zero mean Gaussian random variables with variance X1 equal 4, variance of X2 equals 9, and the covariance between X1 and X2 equals 3. Now, first of all, what is the covariance of X, the matrix? The matrix, the covariance of X, equal H. From the given here, what does the matrix cover?
Okay. At first will be 4
Yeah.
for the change X, then will be the اسمه
The diagonal. خلينا نبدأ الدايجونال الأول.
اوكي دكتور.
طيب.
Then 3
هذا اللي هنا. Okay. Which is CX1 X2 covariance.
Yes. And 3 CX2. Then
yes.
9.
9, which is the variance of Y, of X2.
The variance of Y square.
Excellent. So basically in general هذه عبارة عن بس عشان أذكركم the variance of X1, the variance of X2, and we have CX1 X2 which is the covariance CX1 X2. تكلمنا عنها قبل كذا هذه. So now I know the mean أول شيء بعد نفس الشيء. What is the mean vector X1 X2?
0.
2 zeros ها because it's a vector. ممتاز. هذه given برضه. So I know from the given now the mean vector of X1 X2 and the covariance matrix of X1 X2. Now, in order to find the PDF of y, I know that y1, y2 will be Gaussian because it's linear transformation. And we already told you that. We did not derive it. But we told you that if the input, which is x1, x2, are jointly Gaussian, then the output, y1, y2, will be jointly Gaussian. So in order to find the PDF of y, I know the shape of it, but I need the mean of y, first of all, y1, y2. So what is the mean y1, y2? Sorry, the transformation matrix أول شيء ما قلناها. T is the transformation matrix. Okay, why? Because I gave you these two functions. y1 equal x1 minus x2, so it's 1 minus x2. Okay, and y2 equal 3 x1 plus 4 x2. You need to know how to read the equations and put it into matrix. Okay, so I might not give you the matrix, the transformation matrix. I might give you these functions. You need to find the transformation matrix. Okay, now I know that the vector y, the mean of y, will be equal to what, Shabab? Will be equal to the transformation matrix multiplied by the means of x.
Yes.
What is the means of x here?
0.
Zeros. So what do I get as the mean of y?
0.
Zeros, yes, exactly. So basically, the mean of y1 equals the mean of y2 equals 0. Okay, this is the first thing. The second thing I need to find is C of y, which is the covariance matrix of y. The covariance matrix of y equals by الرول اللي أعطيناكم إياه equals T multiplied by the covariance matrix of x multiplied by T transpose. T is here. نفس الT اللي كتبناها فوق. The covariance matrix of x, we found it already, 4, 3, 3, 9. And T inverse, sorry, the T transpose. T transpose اللي هي تخلي those columns والcolumns rows. Now, if I multiply these three matrices together, I get this. 28 minus 66 minus 66, 252. What does this mean? Let's try to read. If I ask you, if I did not ask you find this, if I ask you find the variance of y1 from this matrix, what is the variance of y1?
28.
28.
28. What is the variance of y2?
252.
Yes. Now through the private chat, Shabab, through the private chat, send me what is C, y1, y2. Through the private chat, send me this from what you read in the matrix here. What is the covariance between y1, y2? Quickly, Shabab.
Doctor, I have a question.
تفضل.
We have here matrix 2 by 2. Will we have something like 3 by 3 or 4 by 4, or this is the maximum?
In this course, no. In this course, we'll only focus on 2 by 2.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Great. Okay, so basically, as you can see, we read it from here. It's minus 66. The covariance between y1 y2 is the cross diagonal. Diagonal اللي على sorry, two elements on that are non-diagonal. اللي هو minus 66. Okay. So now I know everything about y. I can write the PDF. PDF هذه. Now what is rho? if I ask you through all this, find me the correlation factor. Now, if you know the variances of y1, y2, and you know the covariance, then you can write the correlation factor, which is the covariance between y1, y2 divided by the standard deviation of y1 multiplied by the standard deviation of y2. So it's minus 66 divided by square root of 28, square root of 252. And if we calculate this, it will be minus 7.786. How can we describe the relationship between y1 and y2? يا شباب؟ How can we describe the relationship between y1 and y2? Are they correlated or not? شباب?
They are negatively correlated.
They are negatively correlated. Yes, negatively correlated means that if y1 increases, y2 would decrease on average طبعا. بينما what about x1 and x2? What was the correlation between x1 x2? احسبوا لي يا شباب. C x1 x2 divided by sigma x1 sigma x2. So it's كم؟ 3 على
2 by 3 into 6.
Yes, which is 6, so half. So the correlation between x1 and x2 was half. So it's positively correlated. بينما correlation between y1 and y2, it's minus 0.78. It's negatively correlated. And this is what the transformation did here. Okay? So y1 y2 are both jointly Gaussian مثل x1 و x2. اللي تغير فيهم المين نفس الشيء still 0, but اللي تغير variances of y1 y2 and the covariances, which made the relationship between y1 y2 different. The correlation factor تغير صارت minus 0.786 بعد ما كان 0.5 for x1 x2. So you can see transformation, linear transformation, what it can do. So basically it ended up like x1 x2 can الPDF or the scatter function حقها look like this 0.5 rho equal 0.5. For y it became like this rho equal minus 0.786. Okay. Now if we started with uncorrelated x, so if we started with rho equals 0, then with rho equals 0 for x, so if we started with cx1 x2 equals 0, then the resulting y's will have this correlation matrix, this scatter plot, or this PDF.
So, Doctor,
تفضل.
is there a relation between the correlation of x and the correlation of y? I mean, a multiplication, a constant?
لا ما هي. There's no clear relationship between the correlation factor. لكن there is a clear relationship between the covariance matrix of y, matrix كلها, and the covariance matrix of x. So this relationship. هذه هي. Now this creates the relationship between the covariance of y and covariance of x. زي ما شفنا هنا. واضح يا شباب؟ It's very important to understand this. يعني احنا we have already discussed خلينا نقول some complicated transformations, but mainly we'll focus on the linear transformation of the Gaussian. And if I give you the multiple transformation, you need to be able to find this Jacobian and calculate this, what we have done here. أي سؤال يا شباب؟ Okay. So the last topic of chapter 5 is about sampling and estimation. طيب, let me little bit give a brief introduction on this. What do we mean by estimation here? Now, so far, when we talk about probability theory, we have been talking about, I give you the PDF, I define a random variable, right? And I give you the PDF, for example, and you find for me all these probabilities. Probability of certain event X less than كذا, and you find all the different probabilities, and you find the moments X bar, right? And variance X square, all these different functions, different moments, right? So we define a random variable according to certain experiment. We assume that we know the PDF, and we have talked about so many different PDFs. And then we calculate these probabilities, moments, and so on. Now, there's something else called estimation or inference. خلينا نكتبها بين قوسين. Inference. That is highly related to estimation. لكن تسوي العكس. Inference اللي هو استنتاج. Okay. Now, I don't assume that I have. So basically, I have X as a random variable again, but I don't know the PDF. I don't know it, not known, unknown. Which makes me everything else unknown. So unknown, unknown. I don't know even the average. Everything is unknown. However, I know that X is a random thing. تمام? What I have is a set of measurements. Or observations. في كتب تسميها measurements, في كتب تسميها observations. This is what I have. I have instead set of measurements. N خلينا نقول. Okay, عددها N. Now I want to infer, أبغى استنتج X bar sigma X square and so on. I want to infer or estimate X bar sigma X square and so on. Infer or estimate نفس الكلمة. أبغى استنتج أبغى estimate إيش يعني؟ أقرب ولا لا؟ بالعربي إيش estimate يا شباب؟
أجد القيمة، أقرب قيمة.
أقرب قيمة، أقرب، مش أقرب، هي لها كلمة ثانية. I want to estimate X bar والسيجما X square and hopefully I can fit even إذا أنا يعني متخصص مرة I can hopefully be able to fit into a PDF if I have enough
خمن
data.
دكتور يعني
خمن أخمن. نعم estimate مش أخمن. guess أخمن. estimate يقرب. أحدد بالتقريب. أحدد تقريبا. Okay. So basically infer استنتج أو estimate أحدد بالتقريب. أبغى من الميجرمنتس هذه I want to find an estimator for the mean, for the variance, and hopefully for other parameters, for other moments. إلى ممكن ال PDF. Here in this course, we'll focus mainly on these two in the coming discussion. Okay? واضح شباب ايش اللي نبغى نسويه في ال rest of this chapter؟ قبل كده كنت أعطيك random variable وأعطيك ال PDF وأقول لك يلا find me everything. وسوينا عليها مسائل كثيرة وأخذنا so many topics. الآن we'd like to do the opposite. I know that x is a random variable. I know the temperature is a random variable. لكن I really don't know its PDF. ولا عندي المين حقها الافريج، ولا عندي الفارينس، ولا عندي اي معلومه. اللي عندي set of measurements n measurements
مجموعة أرقام.
observations، مجموعه ارقام. وهذا اللي يصير
منها
ترى.
طلع.
انتوا كانجينيرز اخر شيء this is what you will do. You will go to the lab and do measurements. الان through these measurements you want to estimate infer ايش الافريج، ايش الفارينس، ايش السكند ثيرد مومنت، ايش ال expected value of x square، الباور مثلا، خلينا حنربطها بعدين بالباور. hopefully you can do the PDF حتى. لكن في الكورس هذا حنركز على الثنتين هذول، المين estimation of the mean estimation of the variance. واضح شباب ايش نبغى نسوي؟ This is very important to understand what is the objective of the coming discussion، لانه هذا شوي مختلف عن اللي سويناه قبل كذا. So you might be confused. Okay? Now let's see. So what I have is a set of n measurements. xn, n goes from 1 to capital N, which are identical, which have all identical distribution. يعني أنا عارف إنهم كلهم طالعين من نفس الرandom variable. كلهم they are measuring the temperature مثلا. Okay? I know they have the same mean لأنهم they are coming from the same source. أنا جالس أقيس نفس الشيء، جالس أقيس temperature. فكلهم عندهم نفس المين and نفس الفارينس. So they are basically all identical. And I want to estimate the average of these n samples. يعني أنا عندي n samples small xn. لو تذكر random variable capital xn. أنا عندي هنا السامبلز هذه small xn's. هذه السامبلز n samples. I want to estimate their average. Average هنا we give it a hat. We put a hat on top of it. لو تلاحظوا الهات هذه. A hat is used to represent estimate. So the estimate of xn bar, x bar is the average. xn is the average coming from n samples. Okay? And xn هذه الهات هي الاستيميت. واضح ايش اللي سويناه هنا؟ So I have here three things قبل ما ابدا. x bar is the mean. هذا الحقيقي، هذا الافريج الحقيقي. The temperature, which I don't know. Now x bar n is the average الحقيقي لل n samples, which I really don't know again. لكن the estimate of that هذه الاستيميت كبرتها انا شوي عشان بس تفهموها. هذه ال n samples. So we are talking about here estimate of the mean from n samples. So this is estimation of the mean x bar using the n samples available. واضحة يا شباب؟ الآن the way I estimate إذا أنا عندي n samples، إذا أنا عندي n temperatures، أنا أعرف إيش الأفريج صح؟ هذه هي 1 over n I add the all samples. إذا أنا عندي 10 درجات اختبارات للطلاب، الأفريج حقها أجمعها وديفايد باي number، صح ولا لا؟ So the estimator or the measurement function here is this. The estimator of the mean. Okay. واضح يا شباب اللي سويناه أول شيء؟ This is for the mean.
The estimate will be the number, the grades, the sample with the number of the student. That's correct?
Example. Adding the number of samples, adding the samples and divide by their numbers. إذا الجريدز جالسين نتكلم عن mean of the average of the student grades, simply أجمع الجريدز و divide by their number. هذا حيعطيني estimation of the average. Okay. الآن one important factor for the estimator is to understand بالنسبة لنا how does it perform. الآن we'll talk about two important characteristics of estimators. أول واحد should be unbiased, الثاني should be consistent. What does these two mean? Unbiased معناها إيش؟ معناها the estimator should give me إذا أنا زودت الفاريانس زودت number of samples. If I take too many samples, or if I repeated this estimator for different set of samples, and I take the average, هذا هو average of many estimators. يعني بمعنى أنا عندي الآن temperature أسوي n samples وأطلع الافريج، بعدين أخذ n samples ثانية وأطلع الافريج مرة ثانية أو الاستيميتر of the average، وأخذ n samples ثالثة وأطلع الاستيميتر of the average and so on, and I keep doing this. Now if I take the expected value of this estimator كل مرة يطلع لي this should give me this expected value should give me the real sample average, the real mean. Let us see how. The expectation of this sample mean هذا هو عبارة عن إيش؟ 1 over n multiplied by the summation of the samples، صح ولا لا؟ And I know that expectation is linear operator, so I can take it inside. So this is 1 over n summation over n1 to capital N expected value of xn. And I know that this is equal to x bar. So basically I have x bar here. So I know that if I repeat the estimation many times and I take their average, I will get the real sample, the real, mean. So this is the real mean. واضح يا شباب؟ هذا نسميه unbiased. إيش معنى unbiased؟ معناها if I repeated this many times, okay, and I take the average of this estimated averages, I will get the real average, the real mean. So the estimator for which the mean of the estimator of some quantity equals the quantity itself. هذه أول characteristic, property number 1. Next time, inshallah, we'll talk about the consistency, property number 2. أي سؤال يا شباب؟
دكتور
تفضل.
صار شيء تعجل على الخطة الآن ولا
الله
تو في
أعلم.
سر اجتماع؟
علمي علمكم والله. لما يجينا شيء I will let you know. لو طبعا غالبا بيجيكم. نعم.
أقول يا رب ما في سبت دراسة.
والله نتمنى ذلك. خلينا نشوف. الله يستر بس.
جربناها
ما أعتقد إنه أحد يعني خلينا نقول وده اللي صار، بس يعني سبحان الله صارت. الله يعينكم يعني أنتوا الآن أنتوا يعني إحنا وأنتوا الله يعين الجميع. يعني الوقت حيكون ضيق بس إن شاء الله نكون قدها وبإذن الله يعني everybody will be understanding at the end يعني
إن شاء الله. حتى الآن بعض اللابات تغيرت.
لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها آخر شيء.
حتى الآن اللابات تغيرت وجمعوا كم لابين في لاب واحد. هذا اللي جاني بالنسبة لي.
خلينا نشوف.
اللاب الجاي بلابين.
والله غالبا شوف انتوا الماتيريال بتغطوها بس هي الفكره يعني لازم يكون في كونسيدريشن للوقت والكلام هذا، لكن دونت وري يعني ان شاء الله باذن الله يسهلها. تفضل اللي كان يسأل.
دكتور مكتوب في السيلبس ان في بروجكت للكورس.
اي انا كنت ناوي شوي اجله لكن it seems اني I will give it to you this week عشان الوقت برضه. يعني كان عندنا لانه كان بعد رمضان كان في اجازه طويله بين رمضان والعيد، فاي واز هوبينج انه يو ويل هاف تايم during that، لكن الان لا I don't think you have time. So this week ان شاء الله I will send it to you.
شكرا يا دكتور.
حياكم. أي سؤال ثاني يا شباب؟ Any other question? طيب توفيق يا شباب، الله يسهلكم. we'll see you إن شاء الله on Tuesday بإذن الله.
امين وياك. ان شاء الله
حياكم.
سهل الامور، كلها اسبوعين ان شاء الله، من 3 اسابيع الى 4.
الله يسهل إن شاء
سهل
الله.
الامور ان شاء الله، ان شاء الله تسهل.
تتسهل بإذن الله، لا تقلقوا.
شكرا يا دكتور.
حياكم الله. توفيق يا شباب.